Hello everybody, my name's Cody Spurlock, and today I'm here joined by
Coach Hoover.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking mainly about Coach Hoover and how you're a teacher, how you're a father and how you're a coach, and talk about the education system and how that coincides with those other things. I will be upfront and honest though. We tried to record an episode earlier.
Yeah.
And it's gone. It's just gone. Good thing me and Hoover talk a lot. A lot. You guys know that. So never going to have a dry conversation here. So let's go ahead and begin. Mr. Hoover, all right? You're a coach. You're a father. You're a teacher. How do you balance those things?
It's hard. It's something that it takes a lot of balance, I would say, is the key word. My most priority is always going to be my kids. But it is something trying to find that sweet spot between working, coaching, and being a dad, and trying to give enough of your time for that so that you're being effective in each area.
And you have the two kids. What are the names?
I have my son Jace and my daughter Gianna.
So Jace, Gianna, and then you count Sam Logan as one of them as well, or
he's like an adoptive son.
An adoptive son, and you have a few of those, right?
A few
and we joke around about Sam with being another assistant coach in wrestling, but you have a lot of those connections that you built while coaching to a lot of people, and so
yes,
we talk about some of the balances that you have to deal with between all of the different things that you do. But even within those things, you have a lot to handle as well, right? So when we look at coaching, you're not only an assistant wrestling coach here, you're also coaching Sterling College football. What position are you over there?
I coach offensive line at Sterling College.
O-line, and you know what they say, you coach O-line, you can coach anything.
Yeah.
Who said that? Big Red? I don't know if he said it.
Maybe Dan Campbell, I think, said that. Or
Did
Andy
he?
Reid. Maybe
I think it was Big Red.
Yeah.
And
great minds, they always think alike.
Yeah, so we're looking at you coaching O-line, and then being an assistant coach here at the high school. But then you also coach things like rec league soccer and baseball, right? Is that right?
Yep.
So your coaching career has a lot of variety in it. And so what I'm going to ask this, and you don't have to answer, but what's your favorite thing to coach?
Whatever sport my kids are doing.
Whatever sport.
Yeah, whatever sports they're doing. Obviously, I love football. I love coaching wrestling. But probably the most fun I can have is being able to teach my kids.
Yeah.
So I know nothing about soccer, but being able to learn soccer with my son and my daughter is a pretty fun experience.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I know nothing about soccer either. The closest thing I get to European football is American football, and only the names mean the same thing there. But talk about some of the other coaching. How long have you been coaching here in Nickerson for?
This is my third year coaching here.
Third year, and I remember when you were first starting to get interested in coaching wrestling here. You kind of just showed up and wouldn't go away. And showing up and not going away, it worked for you this time.
Yeah.
You came out when Flowers left, and you really stepped up, helped Coach Sparky a lot. And then in football, you used to coach football here at Nickerson before going on to Sterling. And those the moments where you coach football, a lot of ups and downs, and minus the performance aspect of it.
Yeah.
My main memory of you coaching football is breakfast burritos on Friday mornings.
7 a.m. breakfast burritos.
Do I like waking up at 7 a.m.? No. Would I do it for a breakfast burrito? You best believe I would do it for a breakfast burrito. Especially when they're made by the Coach Who. So we talk about the coaching and how much variety and that's a big portion of your life is coaching. Coaching your kids, coaching different sports, but you're also a teacher.
Yeah.
And that is also another interesting dynamic because they have a lot of similarities. I'd argue that every coach is a teacher. Not every teacher's a coach, though.
Not every teacher's a coach.
And, my question is, would you consider yourself a coach first or a teacher first?
Well, I believe all coaches have to be good teachers. So I always will say I'm a teacher first, because you have to teach, obviously, basics of sports, determination, like all those characteristics we want for like workforce stuff. But also, you need to be able to teach kids how to deal with adversity.
Yeah.
And you can't coach somebody through adversity. Things happen wrong. You can't just yell at somebody and be like, hey, get over it. No, you have to teach kids and model that behavior for them so that they can effectively learn it.
And when we talk about, teaching, you're teaching here now, and you came from USD 308, right?
Yep. Hutchinson High School.
So, which is also where, you graduated from.
Yep.
And so you grew up in Hutch, and you went to high school there, and then you taught there, and then you came over and joined us. And so you've been throughout the greater Reno County community for, almost your whole life, right?
Yeah.
What was it like growing up and kind of seeing some of the changes and the differences throughout, when you were growing up to now teaching here?
Well, obviously, technology adds to everything. I think technically I'm older than Google, which is a little side note. But growing up, being through 308 was always super interesting. I had a very diverse background from my school, then going into the middle school and high school. And even being able to teach there, it's a big difference, because when I was learning through 308, it was a lot of kind of with teaching, it's, hey, this is the way we're going to do it. We've always done it this way. Here's how it is. If you don't like it, there's the door. And then when I became a teacher, things have started to evolve, using more technology, being more adaptive. Then, of course, COVID hits, changes everything. And then coming to here, being able to have things like smaller class sizes and being able to make more connections on a more enhanced level.
Yeah, like
because
more of
a lot
an
more
impact
interaction.
on a more one-on-one level.
Oh yeah.
You talk about some of the changes from when you were a kid versus now, and while technology has definitely changed and been integrated into the classroom much more, if we kind of look at the education system, it at its core really hasn't seen that much change, right? From when it was first established to now, a lot of the fundamentals are still done the same way. Obviously, we're starting to see some more changes, right? And we're starting to see more tech integration, which has led to the development of certain classroom techniques, if you will, bettering the space. But what is one of the biggest challenges of teaching, with the new tech era?
I mean, a lot of it, obviously, there's always the accountability aspect of it. There's always this enhanced level of communication to be able to go back and forth with students, parents, in total, even with the teachers. So, like, if I forget to post an assignment, I have nobody to blame but myself.
Yeah.
If a student turns something in, it's time-stamped. It tells me they turned it in, but if I don't grade it, it's my fault. But if they turn it in 4 days late, they're like, well, I don't understand. And then there's obviously becomes some arguments. Then I think it's also become one of the things that becomes stressful for teachers is it's become a lot easier for parents to voice displeasure. Back when I was in school, it's, hey, you showed up at parent-teacher conferences, you came to a board meeting. Now, people still do that, but now, you can just go on social media and just rip teachers to shreds.
Teachers a new one.
And let them know how you truly feel.
Yeah. And we talk about, some of the difficulties of teaching with tech, and the accountability thing goes both ways. I think what it does is it really gets rid of our excuses. And sometimes we need our excuses. Because it's easier to tell your boss, the technology wasn't quite working.
My internet went down.
I hit submit. I'm not sure what happened. Then saying, the football game was on. The Chiefs were playing, And sometimes, we need our excuses and we get reliant on them. So with the new advances in communication, we don't have a lot of excuses anymore. I mean, even things like snow days are disappearing, which, personally, I love snow days. Every day I want a snow day. I don't care if it's 102 degree out, August 17th, first day of school, I want it to snow. But now, we have the ability to kind of get rid of that. And you said something to me before about kids and a learning environment. If a kid wants to learn, then they will learn. And if a kid does not want to learn, then they will not learn.
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. You have to be motivated. You have to have that self-motivation. I mean, like you said, we talked about it before. Like, I'm not a really big math person. So when I was a student, I'm not going to lie, I didn't try as hard as I could have in math, but I was really into history, and I was interested in history. It's a lot more easy for me to become involved in it. Like, for some students, that's just, when you're interested in it, you're going to try a lot harder. If you're not interested in it, you're like, why does this matter? When am I going to use this? And it shows.
And, so when we're talking about how that really plays a hand in our learning environment, I think a lot of schools and a lot of educators kind of misunderstand, what the job of a school is. Because nobody learns through, just repeating a fact. So I tell you this, you respond to me this. That's not really learning. It doesn't really show understanding of any topic. And then also anyone with a good memory can just repeat facts. I think that really the purpose of a learning environment is to create a learning environment that students are going to want to learn. And that comes in many different ways. Like some things that we've talked about before is specializing things. Because you talk about how you didn't really like math when you were younger, and I hate math. I don't like doing it, but there are certain aspects of it that I enjoy, and there's certain aspects of math that I'm not going to be able to sit there and say, when am I going to use this? Because that's something that gets said over and over again for all of time is when am I going to use this? So if we create an environment to where we no longer have questions like when are we going to use this, I think that students are more willing and want to learn more, right? So what are some things that you do as an educator to create an environment to where your students want to learn?
So for myself, I teach interrelated English. So a lot of what I do when we have reading projects, which most of my kids I have aren't very big on reading, I like to give them the option. We're not going to say it, and I'm not going to force them to read Beowulf or Romeo and Juliet, which are good books. They have their place, but not every kid is interested in it. But if I have a kid that's interested in a book about motorcycles, and there's one that's like, hey, I like science fiction, and this one likes just something about sports, I can have them pick their books and learn the same reading concepts to find themes and find character analysis and be able to do that, but about something they're interested in.
I feel like when you do that, you really give ownership.
You
give ownership to the students. And, that's something I know that you're big on is making your students feel like they kind of get to pick the path on how they learn. And students are just more willing. I mean, I'm more willing to learn about something if A, I want to learn about it, right? And B, if I'm able to learn about it in a way to where I don't feel like, I'm doing it just to go through the motions. And sometimes I think that a lot of us get caught up in just going through the motions, which is something that happens in sports too. Just going through the motions at practice. And, is that something that you kind of, you're able to see better through some of your experience with watching people, in some of the athletics just go through the motions, that you can also kind of see some stuff like that in the classroom?
Yeah, you can see a lot of it, because a lot of when it translates to athletics, I always tell people athletics is your secondary because you're a student athlete. Unless you're a pro, you're LeBron James or you're Isaiah Pacheco, you're not a professional athlete, so you have something before that. So normally, if you do have those bad habits on the field, on the court, anywhere, you probably have those same bad habits in the classroom.
Yeah.
Kids that kind of go through, I'll use the wrestling room for an example. The wrestling room, if you're kind of only going 50%, you're probably only going 50% in the class you like the least.
Yeah.
And it reflects from that because it comes from almost a culture from not just the school or district, but that you have your own kind of culture that you have.
And, I think a lot of kids get caught up in that. And it's not just kids, right? I think it usually starts when, we're younger and we start going through the motions. But, then we get into the real world and we find ourselves still just going through the motions. And when you go through the motions and at your job and you get content, but then you go through the motions, in your personal relationships.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, educators have the opportunity to kind of, stop and help students be able to, develop themselves past to kind of, prevent the mindset that a lot of us have now, which is just, being okay, being good enough. And I know that's another thing that you like to, you preach about is, I know for a fact you do not like to just be okay.
Yeah, I don't like to be okay. Okay is the enemy of good. Good's the enemy of great, and great's the enemy of excellence.
Yeah.
I love, and I always say excellence, and excellence isn't, hey, everyone gets 100%. That's not excellence. Excellence is you reach your ceiling. Some people's ceiling is, maybe it's that 75%. Maybe it's, hey, I had a 500 record in wrestling. Maybe it's winning 4 football games. Maybe that's your ceiling. But trying to reach your ceiling and not just saying, hey, I'm okay. I got to the door. I don't want to be at the door. I want to kick the door down, and I want to get to the second level.
For me, the biggest tragedy is wasting talent.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people in our school and our community and in our world who have gifts, and they don't feel like using them, and they don't want to be the best version of themselves, and they settle for mediocrity. And settling to be mediocre is just, it's the enemy of innovation. It's the enemy of creating new opportunities for yourselves, for your family. And so, when we talk about, some of the classrooms and how some of our education system is built, I think sometimes, it's built in a way that almost promotes mediocrity. And so, would you agree with at least partially that some of our system is too okay with people being mediocre?
I'd agree to an extent. I believe we have a lot of educators, and it's not just here, but in general, that there are a lot that try to become more innovative, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Maybe they were shut down early on by someone higher up. It could be, but there's also a lot of people that are just a little too content with, this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
Just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it was right when it was started so many years ago. And
another thing that plays into, what's always been done is, we're in uncharted territory. In terms of the world, we've advanced so much in the past 20 years that, things like, the fact that I'm able to record and upload a video, twice a day, every day, it's not something that was, that possible last year, not with the resources we have. And so I feel like, we look at how much we've innovated and how much we've grown. If we don't start growing in our other areas, we're going to get outpaced by our technology. We're going to get outpaced by our developments, and then we're not going to be able to put them to good use. And so, what are some things that you would like to see change, within the system of education? Some things that you've been working on as well.
I'd like to see us get to the point of being more specialized. We got to understand, we do it to an extent with what's called individual plans of studies, or IPS for short, where we're trying to get, you take certain courses because this is the career path you want to be on, which is great, but what do we do for the kid that, maybe I don't really like to draw, but I like to weld, or I like to do carpentry.
Yeah.
There's a certain extent to where, there's some pretty cool stuff I've seen be welded and made from wood that I would consider art.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be their art credit. Maybe it's something where, hey, you know what? Obviously, if you want to be a teacher, you probably should go through an English class to understand how to word things. But maybe it's stuff when we get more into that trade, whether it could be HVAC, linesman, or anything. How can I adapt my English to a learning to fit the career path I want?
And when we talk about specialization, that's always something that I've been in favor of. And I brought it up earlier about how we always tend to ask ourselves, why am I learning this? When am I going to use this? Is a common thing that we say. And when I look at some of the classes that I've taken, for example, debate, it's worth a fine arts credit.
Yeah.
But it's so much more.
Yeah.
Right? When I think about debate, and you've helped judge for us, it's an English class.
Yeah.
It's it's also that fine arts class, and at some points of time, it's more than just what meets the eye. It's public speaking. It's
research.
It's like it's a whole world, and so when I get the credit for fine arts, it's like maybe we look into it. It's like there's a lot of English that goes into there,
yeah.
a lot of structure, a lot of things that we cover in English classes, and you can ask English teachers. They know when a debate kid wrote a paper versus when one of their normal students write a paper. And it's more than just debate, for example. Creating areas to where students want to grow, and getting rid of some of the black and white credit systems that we have. It's like not everything needs to be. Not everything needs to be standardized.
Yeah.
Not everything needs to be one size fit all.
Yeah.
Because
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Just plain and simple. A lot of students want to be able to pursue certain things, and they're not able to do that if you push them into a geometry 2 class that they don't want to take, and that is not going to help.
I've seen kids not do well in geometry, but they make great basketball players. And basketball is all about angles.
Yeah.
I've seen kids be really good at pool because they understand angles, but they just couldn't get through the textbook.
And when we start specializing more and make more specific curriculums for students, they get the feeling that they're a part of this, and that they're there as an individual.
Yes.
Which I think small schools in some ways do very well in terms of being able to connect with an individual more, but then also larger schools have more opportunities in general. But unless we're able to kind of combine those two things, you leave kids who are maybe able to do what they want, but they don't have the teacher there, the advisors there to help along the way, and vice versa. As maybe they have the teachers in the building who want to help them, but minus some of the access.
Yeah.
And we're kind of put at an interesting point. It's like and I think a lot of that's kind of to do with money. I don't know if our listeners know this, but there's not a lot of money in education.
Yeah, we don't make a lot.
It turns out if you want to be pimping a ride out with your Mercedes, educator isn't one of the career paths that you want to choose. But beyond just having money for our teachers, just money for our buildings and for our class structures, a lot of that it just doesn't exist, and some of that's in due part because of certain communities just are disadvantaged. But a lot of it is like when we talk about the fundings that schools have available, beyond just their annual taxes, it's grants. And the problem with grants is that they don't last. You could get a grant to build a new room, but to continuously put new things in that room, to have updated equipment in that room, the grant's just not going to be able to do it. And so a lot of the extra funding that gets provided to schools, it's a temporary fix. And, that's something that I'm sure you've seen as an educator, is a lot of temporary fixes get put in place. But then the problem just comes up anyways.
Yeah. And it's definitely one of the things we go through, and it's way above my own pay grade, I'll say that. But it is noticed, it's something that, it's why it's so important to vote. It's why it's so important to be involved in your local school board stuff. It's why it's important to just know what's going on at your child's school, your school, because, it comes down to all that. I've seen it at my own kid's school, which is why I will try and be on as much parent committees as I can, and going and seeing what's going on there. Because I've been at the bigger schools that get grant money and see how it goes. But like you said, there's sometimes they can take care of if it's a small problem, but we can't have a short-term fix for a large problem.
Yeah.
Because then you run out of money and you only covered 30% of it, and now where's the other 70% coming from?
Yeah.
Now we got to figure it out, and that becomes a mess.
Yeah. And a lot of this ties together when we talk about education. A lot of the problems kind of root from, the similar things. But, some of the problems that we see in education are problems that we see also in, coaching and the athletics, especially amongst, school systems.
Yeah.
But, we talk about the problems, but, there's things that we can actively do to help solve them. And I think one of them is through, being able to advocate for yourself and for others, which is something that, you have created a channel for here at Nickerson through the recent adding of the chapter of Rise Up Reno, right?
Yeah. So luckily, I know someone over at USC 308, is a person I went to school with, that's Miss Carissa Paxton. She had approached me about possibly setting up a chapter here at Nickerson. It used to be referred to as Communities That Care, and as it's grown, it's become more of the county. And it's given us a lot of opportunity finding kids like our president, who happens to have a pretty good podcast, and a few other really good students that I knew would be a good face for what we're trying to do. Being able to give opportunities to actually go out into the community and help and do better, try to improve our community so that we can get it where we want to be.
And, a lot of the things that we've talked about, including what you just said, is this idea of, I think our largest problem as a society within our smaller, within the Nickerson area, within Reno County, our state, country, world, is people being okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I talked about this earlier, but if you're okay with our community being the way it is, I think we have a good one.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking that it being good is just okay, and we don't need to do anything else, and that's what causes more problems.
Yes.
Don't settle. And when I talk about don't settle, that's something that you have done a lot for, with a lot of your programs that you've been a part of. But do you also when I talk about this mentality, what do you do through parenting, through coaching, to kind of prevent some of this mindset from being instilled with your with the people involved?
So I'll start with the classroom. My classroom, I have this little acronym. It's just called I want peace. I want persistence, enthusiasm, accountability, character, just being a good person, and then excellence.
I'm going to be honest. I thought you were going to misspell peace. I'm not going to lie. I thought you were going to misspell peace.
It happens. Certain people, don't think I'm a very good English teacher. But I like to try to build characteristics into the people I'm around. Obviously with my kids, it's easier because I see them all the time, even on weekends. But with my kids, it's just as much as I tell my son one day told me he wanted to be like me, and one of the things I always try to do and tell everyone is that I love my parents, but I don't want to be my parents. I want to be better than my parents. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but I would think my parents would want me to be successful as well.
And that's, that's a part of
Yeah.
the process, is creating an environment for people to be better.
Yes.
When I look at some of the things I've done, obviously, I'm a little young to be having kids,
Yeah.
but
Too young.
and debate, for example, have been a big part of my life. My goal is not to be the best debater that Nickerson has ever had and ever will have.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to be the best debater that Nickerson will ever have. I want to create a program that will produce people
Mm-hmm.
who will just get better and better and better than me. That is my goal.
Yeah.
Now, when we look at the best debater Nickerson has ever had, it's debatable. Creating the future.
Yeah.
The next generation to step up and take over.
Yeah.
Which that's what you do. You're being a father, being a coach, being a teacher. You've built your life around making the next generation the best that they want to be. And so when we talk about the issues that we face and some of the the mentalities that get in our way, I think it's important to note that we're not just talking here, sitting and complaining. You actively take steps and you actively do things that create a better future for the next generation. You actively do things that get rid of some of the mentalities that get in our way, that kind of go over some of the barriers that we face in the classroom. And so I'd like to thank you for having this conversation with me.
I appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening. This is again Coach Hoover, Sterling football line coach, Nickerson assistant wrestling coach. Also a Nickerson teacher, a rec league soccer coach, and the list goes on. So thank you all for listening. We'll have episode here with Mario Ortiz, a little bit change in the schedule. You can also look forward to seeing Miss Nichols, Rhea, and Carson England all next week, along with a few other faces. So make sure to listen into those, and thank you all for your time.
Go Panthers.